Hi, hello, and welcome back to the HII Method. My name is Jen Hatz. I am the host of the HII Method podcast and also the founder of the HII Method, a holistic, integrative, and innovative approach to assessing and optimizing human health, well-being, and performance. And I'm partnered with Neuroforce One, a human performance company that has been training champions for years. And they offer assessments and training both in their facility as well as remote options available. And this is the time of year that I think is probably my favorite time of year. Well, hands down, my favorite time of year. So we are in the middle of fall right now. And that is not only time of football season and all of the great excitement that comes with football season and following every single week as your team has like all these highs and lows and has you on the edge of your seats, hopefully not having like an absolute heart attack because of the way that the games are going. But on top of that, it's also right now October, which means that all of the Halloween movies are out, and that includes all the blood and gore that I love. I get so jazzed about seeing how cool, first of all, special effects are like amazing anyway, but the fact is, these special effects about blood and gore and everything is all related to the actual blood and gore that happens inside of our bodies at all times. How adorable is that? I love it. It gets me so jazzed. So one of my favorite movies though, like hands down, really just a genre of movies. I love Tim Burton as a director. So all of his movies are like amazing. And so one of my favorite movies, The Nightmare Before Christmas, is of course like on TV all the time right now just because of the time of year. But I think probably my favorite part about that movie that for me, it gets me really excited because, and I'll give you a little teaser here. So one of the characters, Oogie Boogie, he's like this, it looks like a knapsack or something. He looks just like a canvas bag that's all, tied up like a, what is it? Like a beanbag, like when you're playing bags and you got the beanbag. He's basically a beanbag shaped in a man. Shaped into a Oogie Boogie man. But so at the end of the movie, when he is unraveled and he's made up entirely of bugs, and it's all of these insects, and he's just entirely made up of bugs, and that's like the scary part, right? Is that not only that he was this like real scary looking knapsack, but that he actually was made up of bugs inside. And I think that is the coolest thing, the coolest kind of connection to reality, because we, believe it or not, are also made up of bugs. Not necessarily like insects the way he was made up of insects, but our bodies are made up of these tiny little microorganisms, trillions of tiny little microorganisms. So your skin has its own microbiome, its own population of different populations, really. It's like an entire like community of different populations of bacteria, of parasites, of all these microorganisms, and same thing within your body. So your entire digestive system is made up of these little microorganisms. So I always like to view our bodies in a way as being like Oogie Boogie. We are just made up of all these bugs, but they're really important, very cool bugs because of what they do for us and really why we are made of them to begin with. So your body, like I said, your entire digestive system being populated, being colonized by these different coexisting microorganisms, and they all have to coexist. That is the key there, that it's this very diverse, like expansive population, but they all coexist, and they need to coexist. They need to be treated well, they need to be supported properly, and they need to be fed well, and then they will give back to you appropriately. So it is a really nice cohesive community that you need to be cultivating and nurturing and growing inside of you. Now, if the opposite is happening, if that environment that needs to be thriving with these diverse populations of microorganisms, they need to be nurtured and cared for and supported and fed well. If that's not happening, what can happen to you as the host of these microorganisms is that you are no longer functioning at the highest capacity. You are no longer having the support and the nurtured environment that you need, and end up then not being well fed, first of all, but then you're not operating well. You're not operating to your fullest capacity because you, as the host of these microorganisms, you have to coexist with them as well. So first, I think getting nice and cozy with that concept that you got to make friends with the bugs inside of you first, right? So all of these bugs inside of you, all of these microorganisms inside of you, like I said, there's a diverse population. There's a whole lot of them, and there's a whole lot of different varieties of them. I don't like using the word them, but in this case, those microorganisms, we're just gonna call them because they're living there, they're living there rent free basically. So you got to make friends with them a little bit, and then they will give back to you. What I mean by that, by them giving back to you. So as you eat, everything that you eat, everything that you take in by mouth, food and fluids, you have an entire digestive system that has a series of steps, and it has to move within a certain period of time in order to fully accomplish those steps one after another after another. And so that series of steps is the process of digestion and the process of absorption. So your entire, from your stomach to your small intestine to your large intestine, it's a process of digesting, breaking down food and absorbing those nutrients. Now, your actual organs are doing some mechanical digestion. You may be releasing as well, not maybe, you are also releasing different enzymes and different chemicals. So there's also a chemical digestion that's breaking down these food nutrients. But there's another component to all of this, especially within the intestines, and that is those microorganisms. They are also feeding off of your food. I love talking about it like that. Like you're feeding these little bugs, these little, happy coexisting microbes inside of you. You're feeding them. So what you eat, they are eating too. They're taking it in, they're feeding off of it, and then they give off a byproduct as a result. So if what you are feeding your little microorganisms inside, if it is something that helps them to thrive, then they will give off a very beneficial byproduct that helps you to thrive. So it sounds so cool. And I'm going to get into that in another episode of what that byproduct, what that feedback cycle looks like, especially when it comes to the gut-brain connection and how your psychological health, your mental health has a very strong, it's very strongly influenced by what you are eating and how well you are digesting and absorbing what you are eating. It's an entire process. It's not just identifying what you're taking in, what's on your plate. It's also how well you are actually accommodating. How well is your system working to absorb nutrients and to take in, first of all, the nutrients that you need so that your system can then also give you what you need consciously as a human being to be able to continue to move about and thrive in a variety of different ways. So back to your gut though. So those little microorganisms, they're feeding off of what you are eating. And probably the greatest little tip that you could have right now, if you're immediately thinking like, well, what should I be feeding it? I don't think I've been feeding it the right thing then, because I don't feel like I'm getting a whole lot of benefit from my guts. Well, so the best thing that you can be feeding for your gut bacteria, if you've heard of, a lot of people I think have heard of probiotics and maybe prebiotics. Now, here's a big caveat I'm going to throw out there right away. You may have heard of probiotics and prebiotics because of supplements, because you're being told through marketing, you're being marketed to in order to buy supplements telling you that you somehow are lacking in these things and you need them, you need to supplement in order to make up for them. That's not the entire truth of the matter. So there is a supplement industry that is selling probiotics and maybe selling prebiotics, or maybe just using those terms in their products. And this is not just for food supplements. This is also carried over into skincare products, where they're now adding in all of that nice trendy lingo that their skincare products are going to provide your skin microbiome with different prebiotics and different things to help for your skin barrier too. So you need to have a degree of discernment, first of all, with all these products and whether or not this is actually going to be something that your microorganisms do in fact need, or if there's maybe just an extra sales pitch because of the trend terms that they're using, right? But So when it comes to, like I said, those nutrition supplements that are being kind of pushed, whether it's probiotics or prebiotics, here's the thing. Those probiotics and prebiotics, these are specific parts of nutrition that you already get from the foods that you eat, if you are identifying certain foods in your diet to prioritize. What foods to prioritize? The high fiber foods like fruits and vegetables are going to be high in fiber. Whole grain carbohydrates, different whole grains are going to provide you with that fiber. Different legumes and beans are going to provide you with that fiber. All of that fiber also constitutes what's called your prebiotic fibers. So these prebiotics that you might be hearing about in supplements, it's actually fiber that is found in your foods. That fiber, as you eat foods that contain fiber. So again, this is really all of the carbohydrate foods that contain at least some form of their structure to them. So if you want to think about carbohydrate foods are all different plant foods. And when they contain a structure to them, they have not been completely, mashed down and extracted into like a flour. They actually are still the whole vegetable. Let's say like a crown of broccoli. So it still contains its structure. That means it still contains its fiber. So when you then eat that high fiber vegetable, in this case, the fiber that you're eating, it's helping to move, first of all, the food that you have taken in through your digestive system at a rate that is appropriate for you to properly digest and absorb and extract all those nutrients from the food itself. So it's not only helping you to time out your digestive process, but then the fiber itself is also feeding those little microorganisms. All those little bugs get to feed off of that fiber as it's moving steadily through your system, and then you actually remove it fully from your system. So the fiber itself is not providing like a specific nutrient to you in the form of like calories or any of your micronutrients like vitamins and minerals, but because of the importance that it holds with not only timing the rates that you digest so that you are absorbing all those nutrients that you do need, and the fact that it's feeding your gut bacteria. You need to treat fiber as if it is one of those other nutrients that is also essential for you. So if you've heard of your macronutrients, if you've heard of how calories are broken down into basically 3 main categories of different foods that contain those calories, and those 3 different categories that contain calories are kind of separated based on what they do in the body. And that's your macronutrients, and it's your protein, your carbohydrates, and your fats. So those are your 3 sources of calories that you'll get from foods, or the 3 types of calories that you'll get from foods based on the actions that they have in the body. Now, fiber, because fiber itself is not providing calories, it's not necessarily considered one of the macronutrients. But because of how important it is for your overall digestion and how well you can actually use the macronutrients that you are taking in, you need to treat it as if it is the 4th macronutrient. And I say that with a big asterisk because there is actually another form of, there's another source of calories that you can get that's technically the 4th macronutrient, but it's alcohol. And that's, if anything, an anti-nutrient. You don't want to include that in your nutrition program as being like, oh yeah, I need to have some of that every day. No, you don't. It's that'll be another topic for another day entirely. But so the 4th macronutrient really should be a focus on fiber and the content of fiber that is in your diet, because like I said, that's going to help feed your entire system. Now, the Neuroforce One app actually has a nutrition tracking tool built into the app, and part of your macronutrients, it also helps to identify the fiber content out of those macronutrients, out of specifically those carbohydrates that you are eating. And because of the way that the tool has been built, the recommendations are that much more realistic for what it is that you need. So your total calorie goal for the day and your total macronutrient goal for the day, it also factors in fiber in a realistic ratio to everything else that you're taking in. So it's a phenomenal tool. So that's the Neuroforce One app. Download it today and start using it so that you can track your nutrition intake to the degree of identifying how much that fiber you're taking in, knowing that that fiber is helping to feed your system appropriately. Now, here's the opposite end of the spectrum though. So foods or carbohydrates specifically that don't contain that fiber, this is what you would look at as like all of your refined carbohydrates. So anything that is made up entirely of that refined sugar, refined flour, those are little simplified descriptions of what a refined carbohydrate is. I want your biggest takeaway of what a refined carbohydrate is to be the form of juices and sodas and sports drinks and anything that is a liquid with easily, quickly digested carbohydrate in the form of sugar. Because everything that I just explained about how the digestive process works and how you have to provide that fiber to feed all of your gut bacteria so that they can then give you a good beneficial byproduct in response. They're like, oh, thank you for the fiber. Here's a beneficial byproduct for your brain. But if instead you are feeding your gut bacteria with quite literally just liquid sugar, that's all that juice and sodas and sports drinks, it's just a liquefied form of a carbohydrate. So you are you're removing entirely the fiber component. So all of that sugar, all of that quick digesting carbohydrate is immediately absorbed, especially not only within the stomach, it's especially absorbed within the small intestine where your bacteria are, where your bacteria live and where they need to thrive and feed off of. So trust me when I say this, your bacteria will feed off of that sugar. They will absolutely feed off that sugar, but you're not going to get the beneficial byproduct that you would get if they were happy and healthy and being properly taken care of. Instead, you get an adverse byproduct. You actually get a worsening of a byproduct from your gut bacteria because they have been feeding off of this sugar that you've been drinking and it's immediately being absorbed. So this is like a double whammy, right? It's like not only are you not providing your body what it needs to be able to fully work to its highest capacity, but you're also giving it something that it doesn't need and that it will in fact have this adverse response to. Now, on top of all of this, as if we were talking about enough blood and gore when it comes to the being made up of all these little buggies. But on top of that, so everything that you're absorbing is being added into your blood. So your blood, I've mentioned it before, that your blood is this really cool connective tissue. It's a liquid connective tissue. And based on where it is within your body, it will be composed a little differently. And that's because this liquid tissue, as it's moving across and through different areas of the body, different systems, different cells, it's going to have this dynamic interaction and possibly give off or replace different things based on where it is. So your blood is this constantly dynamically changing liquid connective tissue. Probably the coolest thing in the world. So if you haven't already had like this higher degree of respect for blood based on what I've been talking about, now you're probably like, oh my God, it really is that cool because it's constantly changing. And now when we take a blood assessment, we are taking blood specifically like one type of blood. If you want to think of it like that, you're taking blood from your venous circulation. So the blood that's returning back up to the heart. So this is going to be in itself very different from the blood that is moving away from your heart to the rest of your body. Also very different from the blood that is moving immediately away from your intestines going towards your liver. So there's this very short little track of highway between your intestines and your liver where specific blood that is containing all of those nutrients, everything that you absorbed from your intestines is going in this very short little highway of blood passage up to your liver so that your liver can then metabolize and send these nutrients where they need to go or metabolize and remove nutrients that you don't really need to be having circulating around you. So your liver is kind of like the main director, kind of like channeling anything where it needs to go. But otherwise, there's this little short section of highway between the intestines that are absorbing all of these nutrients, and they need to carry it through the blood to the liver. So that little short section of highway there So that is going to contain a completely different composition of nutrients. It's a completely different composition of blood from anywhere else in the body. How cool is that? Like, I love the fact that, first of all, that you have that dynamically changing tissue at all times, and that we at least know cognitively, like consciously, that we can assess your blood to a certain degree and identify to a certain degree how your body is handling what it is that is going on, at least in this case, nutritionally. Now, because a blood assessment is happening in one part of the body and not in another part of the body, just because of the safety of trying to extract blood, and all the other factors that go into that. So because of that, there's also a degree of discernment that you have to use. So I always encourage blood assessments to be able to identify at least how your body's functioning to that extent. There's going to be things that you can identify in blood that you can't feel or sense or see. There's nothing that you can cognitively try to focus on to tell you what your blood sodium is. You have to actually take a blood assessment to see what your blood sodium is, right? So there's that separation and that distance that is already there. But on top of that, the blood assessment can be a really cool tool in your arsenal to help tell you and guide you towards other decisions, or at least help guide you back through a troubleshooting process or through a problem-solving process, because it gives you an indication of something. And then you can start to look at, okay, if I know that my blood assessment is showing, let's say it's your lipid panels, like the amount and degree of different types of fatty acids and different types of triglycerides, different types of lipids that are circulating in your blood, you can start to backtrack through and say, okay, if I know that my nutritional intake is XYZ, and I know that my blood is showing XYZ, then I at least have those two indicators to try to play around with. So I at least know what's within my control with my nutrition. I can start to, piece together some things, maybe change some things, and monitor to see if and how your blood is changing in response to that. Now, here's the cool thing, though. Because these are two ends of the spectrum, I like using my hands to identify this. Because these are two ends of the spectrum here, there is a middle ground here, and that is your digestive system and how well you are actually absorbing. And if there is a byproduct that you are also giving off, that your bacteria are giving off, and if it is a beneficial byproduct or an adverse byproduct that you don't want to have accumulating. So there is that middle piece that I think too often gets either misunderstood or overlooked. Now, what I said at the beginning with probiotics and prebiotics, so there's an entire supplement industry that is really dead set on promoting the fact that there's this missing piece with your GI health, your overall gut health, and how we need to start identifying it and looking at it. So that in itself is really helpful, I guess, recommendations. It's really helpful guidance to start to point our direction towards the fact that, there is a missing piece that we need to be looking at, and it's our gut health. How to take care of your gut health, though, is an entirely different world of understanding that needs to be taken upon very slowly and steadily. So I don't want to get too much further into your gut health today, because it is, like I said, it's a whole world in itself. You got a whole little world of microorganisms living inside of you. So just take that today and absorb that today, knowing like, okay, I gotta take care of my little buggies inside of me so they can take care of me too. And if anything, just prep yourself knowing that the next time that I talk about this, we're going to get a little further in depth about what it means, really, not only just that you have these microorganisms inside of you, but really why they're there and what they feed off of. And the fact that, this is the coolest thing, the fact that not only do you coexist with this environment that you are building and feeding and cultivating inside of you, it's this coexisting internal environment that you have with your internal environment. But that internal environment of you is also coexisting with your external environment around you. Probably one of the coolest things that I get jazzed about so much when it comes to just human physiology in general and biology, but the fact is the fact is, our bodies have been designed and have evolved and have shaped and developed over time in order to coexist with our external environment. In order for us to exist, we need to coexist, and we need to coexist with the environment that we live in. And that environment is always going to be changing. That is the harsh reality, I think, that is not always easy to stomach. The fact that things are never really as is forever. Things are always changing. That is the always present constant of the universe, is that change is inevitable. Change is always happening. And so the environment that you live in is always changing. And so your body and how your body works is always adapting to and evolving over time in response to these changes, so that way you can exist, and you only exist by coexisting. And it's the same thing within you, within your internal environment. Your internal environment has to coexist with you, first of all, but it's coexisting with the external environment. So keep that in mind for the next time that we chat about anything related to gut health and the environment, really the coexisting environment between the outside environment and our internal environment. It's going to be a huge topic that I'm very excited to go even further into. But for the sake of today, just walk away knowing that fiber is going to be the greatest focal point for you when it comes to your nutrition. If anything else, if there's anything that you need to focus on with your nutrition, if you're like, yeah, no, I'm good, I've got everything. Well, no, you probably could focus on your fiber just a little more, because I can guarantee you that no one else has taught you the way that I just taught you about fiber and how it's feeding those little microorganisms. So big takeaway today, feed those little microorganisms, feed the little buggies, make them happy so that they make you happy in return. All right. Have a good one, guys. I'll talk to you later. Bye.